Be brave today. Cold in Cape Town.
It's chilly. It's lekker. I dig it.
Yeah, I don't. How you been otherwise?
Yeah, we're good, eh? Yeah, we're having fun, learning some things.
What, at work or at home?
No, I'm talking work.
Okay, cool.
School fees don't come easy.
No, they don't.
Or shall I say, experience doesn't come easy or cheap.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Zizwe. Morning, Ferdy, Frank, Mary.
Morning.
Good morning.
Just Ferdy. Barry, the lessons don't stop, eh? I'm just warning you.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. When we start getting bored, then that's when you start looking for trouble.
Yeah. Morning, Dom.
Morning.
I think just wait a while. There are a few people joining. Yeah, it's been a while. We've been away and so busy. It's been hectic. But it seems to be that way for most people. Barry, are you client facing at the moment or on the management side?
Yeah, a bit of both. Yeah, a bit of both. So back office, client facing, yeah, all of it.
Going well.
Yeah, I think so. Learning a lot and yeah, trying to get better every day type of scenario. But yeah, yeah, not there yet. So as you guys also said, so that makes me quite worried that I'll never get there and be perfect. But yeah, we're trying to get there each day a bit better, I guess.
Yeah, I think what we mean is if you think that you're perfect, then you've probably got a problem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And you don't have a rear view mirror type of scenario.
yeah.
Yeah.
Morning, Cindy.
Morning. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
Good, thanks.
Is it warmer where you are than when Barry is? Barry looks like he's at the North Pole.
I've got a heater like coming straight at me. It's cold. Not that cold. It's not the worst winter we've had.
Okay. Yeah. And Barry, yourself, what's your role at the moment in your business?
Yeah, so I mean, the joy is client facing, but the reality is I need to spend more and more time on the business itself. So I'm stepping back quite extensively from client facing. Yeah, that time will come again. I'm certainly not walking away completely, but I'm limiting the number of clients that I'm dealing with.
Okay. Sending someone's lost. Okay. Right, I think just give it a couple of minutes. Morning, Shannon. How's Durban today? You muted, Shannon. Or we can't hear you. Is there a problem on my side? I can't hear anyone.
No, you're fine on my side.
Can hear
All
you good on my side.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Carlos looks like he's in a dungeon. Jeez.
Yeah, I'm going to try and swap it around now. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning, everybody.
Okay, guys, so I think let's slowly get started. It's been a while. Apology is just, I've been so busy. Family, work, been in the bush, grandkids. So it's been quite busy. And with the holidays, time's just zipped by. But anyway, we're back. With no specific subject today, I thought what we want to do is, morning Russell, is get back to basics on where, what the group is really about. And I thought it would probably be a good idea to just discuss some of the challenges that we have in doing lifestyle financial planning. So obviously this will spill over to normal issues around or challenges around actually running a financial planning business or practice. But I think I'd like to first keep it quite specific to lifestyle planning, which in my view means that we go deeper with clients. We spend more time onboarding them. We really get to understand the person around who they are, what they're trying to achieve in life before we start looking at the money. I find myself even in our team, every now and then, we have our whole process that we follow. We still strictly follow, and trust me, it absolutely works. But it is easy to now and then to come drop a few of the slides that speak to the softer side and ask a bit more of the tougher questions. Tougher for clients, but also tougher for us to sit through. I had an experience 2 weeks ago where we went through our PE office and we had 2 brand new clients. So we started the onboarding process with, and then one where we had the second meeting with, and we hadn't timed it great and they ran a little over. So it was literally from one meeting into the next. And I was absolutely exhausted after 3 meetings, like absolutely emotionally stuffed. And it just made me realize again that, when you do this lifestyle thing properly, you really, really engaged, you're really present, and it can take its toll on you. And I don't think it's something you can necessarily get better at. I mean, I think I realized again that we've got to be smarter in how we space our meetings, leaving time between them, one to recover sounds bad, but yeah, to kind of recover or debrief from the one and then kind of get ready for the next. And I think especially, it's a privilege to have 3 meetings like that in one day, because we all battle to get new clients, but especially when we're doing that, because I think it's so important that we are kind of mentally and emotionally present for our clients, because we can show them nice pictures and we can say all the nice keywords. But I think at the end of the day, when they leave a meeting, they can sense, whether we are present or whether we're not present. And that can very easily make or break that relationship right from the beginning. So that's something that I've experienced in the last few weeks, and I've been doing this for a long time, and it still happens. So it does happen. There's a few other things that I want to touch on, but I think if everyone just wants to comment on that first. I've got a few softer issues I want to touch on, but anyone want to say anything in relation to what I've just mentioned?
Dirk, I can't do 3 meetings on a day. It's just wipes me out. And, with all the other stuff that has to happen when you run your own business, I think people underestimate the amount of work that goes into good financial planning, and the business side and the compliance side. It's difficult for me to kind of grow my business because there's just not enough capacity. And I really am, to use the term, passionate about what I do. So I'm very specific about who I take on and when I take them on, because I could take on more, but I just don't have the emotional and mental capacity for it.
Cindy, how many client families do you currently deal with?
I haven't counted recently, but it's about 80, 90. Most of them who are married, we work with them together. So it's not enormous, but I also choose not to work full days in the office. I'm very specific about making time for gym. I do a lot of learning, so a lot of my evenings are taken up with. I mean, I'm on a couple of courses at the moment. You know, I got my CEFT recently, so I'm trying to blend it all in so that I don't feel like I'm just being one-dimensional. At the end of the day, I'm selfishly looking at my own life and saying, I want to keep my husband. I want to keep leading worship in a church and all of this kind of stuff. So I've got so many different facets to my day.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think it is important. I think it gets spoken about a lot, but I mean, mental health is obviously important in what we do, because if we're obviously not in a stable place, I don't mean versus unstable. I just mean this place where we've got space. It's very different to be present in those meetings. Yeah, I think 80, 90, I think is a really good number. I mean, I've got a team I work with, and it's a lot. And I know it's a luxury to say that. I mean, I know those starting out will have more, and that's fine, because not every client is going to be a full-on lifestyle financial planning client. You know, some of them, you can still take them through a process, but at the end of the day, there's immediate things that need to happen, and they're limited as to the advice that they need, perhaps because of the stage in their career, and things like that. But yeah, anybody else? I know that we love being busy, and I mean, being busy, can feel fantastic. When you come to the end of the day and you're absolutely exhausted, and you go home and your wife is all proud of you, or your husband or your partner, because you've worked so hard, and it's fantastic. But trust me, when you get a little bit older, it's not that important anymore. What's more important is obviously kind of the outcomes. So I think I mean, I'm not saying don't work hard. I'm saying, again, you have to work bloody hard, otherwise it's just not going to happen. Cindy, everyone knows you inherited a bit of a business, and you worked very hard for many years. I've grown it from the bottom. So now we're in a position where, maybe you can take time off for gym or whatever, or actually you should. But yeah, Dylan, you got your hand up.
Morning, everyone. Maybe a different perspective. I definitely don't have the luxury of only having 80 or 90 clients. I wish I could. Yeah, embarrassed to say how many clients we have, because it's ridiculous. And at the moment, obviously running the business and managing staff, plus having another business that runs parallel to this one. And obviously the businesses work together. It's a really high workload. And often I'll have 3 or sometimes 4 client meetings in a day, plus another 3 or 4 operational meetings where I'm either implementing systems, doing something with staff, or dealing with providers. I'll get home and my girlfriend will look at me, and I'll just sit on the couch and just not want to talk or make a decision or anything. And sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 days like that in a row, and you're literally absolutely shattered. So yeah, I think it's difficult to show up when that happens maybe too many times in a row, and it's important to also manage your diary. It's something I've been learning this year, how you're actually managing your diary, and not always just allowing people to walk into the office and take time, especially when you still then go through a whole work day and you haven't done any work in terms of replying to all your emails or doing analysis or whatever you might need to do. So I think that's been quite a big lesson for me this year. and yeah, onboarding new systems as well as new staff members at the same time is extremely draining too. So yeah, from my side, it's been, and I don't know, hopefully people have some advice on these topics, but I find it very hard to manage that. I think over the next year, we're going to work very meticulously around, and maybe it's also a swear word to everyone, but segmentation and just making sure I have the right clients that I'm dealing with that I guess can afford our services. I think that's also important. You can't help everyone as much as we try to, which might be a downfall. So yeah, just some thoughts from my side.
Yeah, no, Dylan, thanks for sharing. I mean, what you know, I've been where you are. As I said, sometimes I still get there. When you run your own business and you're passionate about it, you do have to drive everything. You also do want to do everything yourself, even if you're hiring people to do that job. You will find that you still overstep and have the final say, and that's not always a bad thing. I'm learning that long term, doesn't work, but it's taken me a long time to learn that. But yeah, look, I mean, I still work long days. But so you're absolutely right. My initial thing was more on when we're sitting with clients, and being present emotionally and being able to connect with them. But you're absolutely right. I mean, if where you are, where you're both the advisor and you running the business and you running different aspects in the business, and then you've got another business on the side. Yeah, I don't know, but you carefully you don't burn out there. You don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. But I also know that at some point you end up doing all these things because you're entrepreneurial by nature, and then eventually you kind of work out what works for you. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying probably be a little bit careful and yeah.
I think they do tie in though, Dirk, because if you are quite stressed or thinking about something else you have to do in the next meeting, clients will definitely pick up on that. And as you say, you need to show up for clients in meetings. You have to be emotionally available because half the time we end up being kind of like psychologists. And if you're not available to do that, you're losing out on an opportunity to connect with the client and you're not going to get past surface level.
I agree with you completely, and hence I'm saying, I mean, maybe what you could consider is that you have and again, this is a luxury if you can select when you see clients, but ideally you want to, if you go into a doctor, you make an appointment. If you go to a chiropractor, you make an appointment, you fit in. You don't just say, I want to come at 9:15 on Thursday, and they say, okay, I'll clear my diary for you. So, part of being professional is actually saying, look, this is, and maybe what you need to do is have certain, I mean, you'll probably know which time of the day you are at your best for in-person client meetings. And maybe what you need to do is say, okay, look, and look, where you are, I understand some of them are lifestyle financial planning clients, and some of them will just be clients who need life cover for a bond or an RA or whatever. I absolutely get there's nothing wrong with where you are. There are a lot of businesses, you spoke about segmentation, where you do have that. In fact, I know very few businesses that don't have a bit of a tail of that. Because maybe it doesn't tend to start like that, but then eventually they become one of those clients, and you either disengage completely or you just kind of put them on a kind of a retainer kind of a relationship. But I think making special time for these meetings is really important. It's something I'm trying to, or not trying to, it's something we are going to be implementing into the future around our review meetings. Matthew Jarvis they call it surge meetings. A lot of guys around, and I know Andy Hart does it, Nick Lincoln does it, where what they do, where possible, let's say if you do reviews twice a year, you're trying to get all your reviews to happen within a period of like 6 or 8 weeks or whatever it is. And I've read about it as well. There's quite a bit of material on it. And the benefit of doing that is obviously everyone's review is different. But if you have a process, which we should have, that process can be set up and it's basically the same for every client. It's just in a detail that's a little bit different. And if you run your reviews like that annually, then eventually you'll take the previous ones and just update numbers and whatever needs to be updated, the personal side and all of that. But I'm looking at doing that because I'm finding, like as I explained the other day, when I had these 3 meetings, and then I had 2 reviews of older clients. And thank God they're really good clients. And it was, 5 minutes about the portfolio and the planning because everything's on track. The rest was just catching up. But otherwise, I couldn't have done them justice. If one of them had an issue, I would have battled to actually go into that. So when you're setting up reviews with clients that have worked with for a long time, where the plans are working nicely, you're on track. I could probably run 4 of those in a day quite easily if we set up correctly, because the whole team's set up to do reviews. Everyone's focused on reviews. It doesn't mean that if there's a new client coming in, we won't leave a gap. We'll leave maybe a day or something like that. But I'm looking at doing that because I believe that focus, number one, it ticks the compliant box, which we hate, but we have to do. So it makes sure we've reviewed all of our clients. But it just allows a focus. And I do believe that when you get focused on anything, you kind of find ways of making it better as well. It's like when you're doing a course. Cindy, you're doing courses. I know, Russell, you've done courses with Errol. Like when you guys get focused on stuff, you kind of do see a whole lot of stuff that you hadn't have thought of because you're very focused on that. So that's what we're going to be doing into the future where possible. It doesn't mean there won't be reviews in outlying times, but that kind of focus. And Dylan, I think maybe what you should try and do is where you know that there are clients that are potentially really great long-term clients, lifestyle financial planning clients, you maybe want to like just put every week, put space in your diary for those when you are mentally the sharpest. Harry.
I was bringing a couple of thoughts together. I mean, I love that idea of reviewing everyone in a really tight period. I think the way that we see that here is for a number of our clients that would make a lot of sense to do before the end of the tax year. Not necessarily all the retired clients, but certainly those in the build-up space. And the South African situation just puts a little bit of pressure on that. I mean, if you're sitting in the UK where your tax cutoff is, it's at the 5th of April or some sort of slightly strange date, they've got most of January, February, March to do those in the South African environment. And South Africans gentle back to work sort of middle of January. And then we've got cut off the end of February. So 6-week period is seriously tight. To be able to engage with people, and nobody's interested in talking in December. So, to try and engage in November really takes it back, and then that gives you actually quite a wide period. So I love the idea of doing everyone, because then you're very much in the zone and you're doing very similar sort of thing in terms of that annual planning meeting. But I would love it if the tax date was pushed back a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, but I mean, that's a great way of doing it. If you're saying, I mean, we can do it anyway. In our business, a lot of our clients are retired, okay, or near that age because of my age. So in our business, that really makes sense. In anyone else's business, all I'm just saying is it's something we're going to be doing because I just believe it's going to give us more focus. And then because it's very difficult. If you imagine you've got 4 meetings. One's the first meeting, one's the second meeting, one's like the goal setting. Then you've got a review of another client. It's like all over the place. Whereas if you just knew that these were all review meetings, you can really, really get focused. If you use slides or whatever you use, you can make sure they're updated and they're kind of focused on what you believe is really important. And you can personalize it per client as well. So it's not like you're treating everyone the same, but they, again, and coming back to a process, what is so important is by having a process that really builds confidence in clients, because they're coming back and they're getting, it's different because the content's different, but it's the same and they feel comfortable and all that. You know, clients don't like change. So yeah, Shannon, I see you had a comment on it, saying our meetings are taxing with clients.
Yeah, you know, when you're really sitting down and you listening with absolute curiosity, I find it's very mentally and emotionally taxing. I come out of that meeting and I feel absolutely drained. Something that's helped is working with these AI tools, because I now don't have to worry about taking the notes and that. And then what I find I do after most meetings is I then sit back and just review the notes and just crystallize everything even further. And if I'm having back-to-back meetings, I just find I don't do a meeting justice. So yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, I find 2 meetings in a day with a client, I am absolutely drained. Maybe it's also the age thing that makes it a little bit draining. But yeah, so that's for me. I really find it draining when you are absolutely engaged with a client.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you completely. Okay.
Yeah, and then
Yep.
just, you know, just something else, Dirk. You know, you talk about the tail end of the book and that. Yeah, I'm similar to you. I've been in the profession a long time, and my larger clients that have been with me the longest, those clients are absolutely a pleasure to deal with. Quite often, I actually feel quite guilty that I'm not giving them enough attention for the amount of revenue that I'm earning from them. But then I've got the other clients that have, quite often it's a friend who I've done a favor to or something like that, and they don't really fit my client profile. Those are the ones that are the worst from a resources perspective. And when I say resources, it's mental resources, emotional resources, the amount of time I spend on them. And that's where the real challenge is. And, you know, I get to a point sometimes where I feel, hang on, I've got to let these clients go, because it's a time waster for me from a business and a revenue perspective. But I do know I'm adding huge value to their lives. And that's what keeps me hanging on with them.
Oh, Shannon, I almost bet that those kind of clients you haven't taken through your normal process because you think you know them and you spoke to them at a braai, so you kind of skip it. And what happens is, I have the same thing. In the minute you're out of that whole framework in which you give advice, and we got to understand that, like, I love what I do, so it's very difficult to have a conversation with me for more than 2 hours and not something come up about financial planning, which is, it's probably a bit creepy, but that's just how it is. But you know, if you had a braai, someone's going to ask you something, or someone's going to kick it off. But who we are as people is still very different to who we are when we in our business and we're doing what we do. You know, and the reason that you set up a framework and a process is so that we can control that situation. Yeah, some people say, well, you shouldn't control. It's bullshit. You've got to control the situation. If you go to a doctor's rooms, he controls where the bed is, he controls where you sit down, and he detects your pulse, and you got to lie back, and he lifts your tongue, and they've got a process that they go through. It's exactly the same with us. And when we move away from that process, we allow other people to take control of that conversation, and that's where it becomes difficult. And the danger, Shannon, is that these people that think, shit, actually, maybe he's not as good as he thinks he is. You know what I mean? Because we've let ourselves down. So it's really, and that's why dealing with family and friends is so difficult sometimes, because they don't understand that you've got to put that different hat on, and you may look the same to them, but you've now got to be a different person. You've got to be a professional. Carlos.
Thanks, Derek. Mine is more question for the more experienced gentlemen and ladies like yourself. You mentioned a process that one develops. How much time is spent, or how do you go about focusing on being able to weigh up the personality type because it does sound a bit that as much as they can tick all the other boxes, you know, that you put in your process to say, okay, this qualifies you as a client I can work with. You know, where do you sort of draw the line, or what do you use as a guide in terms of the personality types, so that you don't have a situation a couple of years down the line with them and you've got this group of clients that, you know, just like really sap your energy, or you know, can one, you know, is it possible to be able to highlight them or include something in the filtration process that yeah, helps you know that what you're getting to, type thing?
Cindy, I would ask you to comment there.
I mean, in terms of, are you asking in terms of developing that process?
Yes, correct. Yeah, because we're having engagement now, and you know, just listening to some of the guys comment, especially around, you know, if you're going to be present, we must
Yeah.
know that we're offsetting that with that it's gonna drain us, because we
Yeah,
want to make
sure.
sure we present. But there's also this element that Dirk highlights, that you know, we want to connect with people and understand who they are. But what that means is the soft skill around that is it's a personality type.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, I'm just reflecting on how much time do I spend understanding what capacity I have for different personality types. And do you find that in your you know, your clientele, do you find that there's a specific personality type, or is it sort of across the board? How do you sort of manage that type thing?
So what I did was I spent a lot of time over probably a year or two figuring out, you know, I took over my uncle's business, and all the clients expected me to be him in female form, which, guess what? Doesn't work like that. So I spent a lot of time, I worked with a coach, and to try and figure out who I am and what is going to get me to be excited to get out about. I was a stay-at-home mom for 13 years before this. So what's going to get me to jump out of bed to come and do this, to make me feel like I'm living a very purposed life and that I'm doing all the kinds of things that are important to me. So it was a very, initially, I would say it was a very deep dive into who I am, understanding myself, understanding what's important to me, understanding what the heck I'm doing here every day. Who am I serving? What do they look like? And so that was I found it an exceptionally difficult process. I had Sharon from Old Mutual Wealth as my coach. She used to push me because I'd say, I don't know. And she'd say, you do know, go there. So I came to a point where I had a very clear understanding of what I want to do, who I want to do it with. So I've got clients of all different personalities. I've got difficult engineers. I've got older women that say, just tell me what to do. Yeah, I've got people that don't want the bottom line. So I think through many years of just understanding my process, and I'm constantly refining it, I feel like I think my personality is that I love people and that I'm prepared. I call my desk here and my office a no judgment zone. So I never judge people. They come in with all different ways of life to the way that I would subscribe to. But because yesterday I had a call, I was actually about to fire a client, which is so funny. I'd written up this whole thing. I actually did a video for him. And then I just had a feeling, don't send it, because I felt like, oh, it was a bit rough. I'll rather just phone him. Sorry, long story. But yesterday I got a call from another guy and he said, someone referred me, and I said, as a matter of fact, who? And it was this very guy. So clearly he's finding value in me. So that's a whole nother story. But I then said to him, let me explain the way I like to work. I don't understand you just saying to me, you've got money in Italy, you need to bring it back. Let me explain how I work. And then he said, oh no, my partner might not be so open to your process. So I'm very upfront about, this is how I want to work. I don't mind about personality, but I do want to understand the human side. I have this theory, and this is a theory that I got the words basically from Susan Bradley from the Sudden Money Institute, but I always had this idea, but I didn't know how to word it. There's two sides to money. There's the technical side. We all know the technical side. We're the professionals in that area. What we don't know, we know how to find. But the client is the professional in their own life. So I've developed a whole process through lifestyle financial planning. I've got some of my transition work in there to really help the client understand what they're trying to achieve and to understand their behaviors and the way they grew up with money and all of this kind of stuff. So I just explain upfront, and if they don't want that process, they're not my client. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's probably been a 10-year journey on that particular aspect of your question.
Yeah, no, thanks, Cindy. That was insightful and super helpful, and yeah, sort of assuring as well, just in terms of working on yourself. Because I think I'm similar, where I have a practice where, and I think a conversation I had with Russell a while back, just in conversing with him and how I, work and so forth, made him realize there's potential that I'm sort of in the lifestyle planning, but not consciously aware what it specifically means. And, that's when he extended the invite to me. So yeah, I'm sort of the one working where it's mixed, and you're sort of trying to get, your lifestyle type plans going forward. Yeah, but I appreciate that. Thank you so much. That was helpful. Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. Russell?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for sharing. So I thought I'd just share some points and also reply to like Carla's question as well. Firstly, just to what you mentioned, yeah, it's very important. I think, and I know it's easier said than done, but we've seen it actually in practice as well. It's like instead of like also protecting your time and making time for like each task and for each client, you also have to see it as like you're also protecting your energy. And what we've seen in also within the last 2 years, when the clients do pick it up, whether it's virtual or in person, they can sense when you are more present or you distracted. So I think the most meetings I've done, and we only do meetings on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, is probably 6 meetings. And I definitely agree. If you are fully present, it's draining. It's kind of a catch-22 because it's fulfilling at the same time, but it's draining. But it's all about adding to the client experience. So you just need to manage your time and also your energy and set those boundaries. And I think from a business point, don't be afraid to put those boundaries, because I know the business side of us is like, oh, but like more clients, more revenue and things like that. I just learned from my personal experience, you end up doing more damage and harm, and it's not sustainable in the long term. And also not just like, and then to like Carlos's question, and I think we've had this conversation before, but I think for any planner there, we've only like fine-tuned it or started actually putting, it's not like 1 hour, it's probably months of work or hours into it. And it's basically you building a working draft, and then you always like Cindy said, you always fine-tune it ongoing. It's never like finalized, but you need to build a onboarding or some form of like process, as what Dirk says, for a client. And this is separate to the whole 6-step financial planning process. So you need to be clear about the type of client you want to deal with, not just like, oh, high earning professionals, but actually do a deep audit. And if you have other team members that you work with, that's even better, because it can keep you from like having biases. But like, what type of clients do you like enjoy dealing with? I picked it up from another podcast or entrepreneur that said, when it comes to business decisions or clients, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a hell no, basically. Because if you just are 50-50, and I've had that with clients, we've been offloading clients, in a reasonable manner for their benefit, but also on our notion is that you can only take on so many clients. And for the clients that we weren't like a hell yeah, like we look forward to working with them and we enjoy working with them and like, communicating with them. If the clients weren't a hell yeah client, I would catch myself like, oh, it's so-and-so that's emailing me. And you don't realize it, but it trickles down into like your plans, your advice, every form of engagement client, where eventually it creates a resentment type of partnership or that the client will pick up on, and then you're going to end up knocking in. So coming back to why you should have an onboarding process, and also in your first meeting with any new client, you use that first meeting to actually like fine tune and forge out, is this a client I want to work with? But then also it's a two-way street. So you can also tell and ask the client, like, look, we call it a meet and greet diagnosis. We also use it to measure like, what are your expectations as a client from me? Because inadvertently, that also tells you, okay, is this a client that would fit my advice process or not? Instead of just saying, let's just go ahead and work. And then you find out 3-4 meetings or a few months down the line, you actually are not a good fit. We had that with one client this year where everything started off great. And because she wasn't clear about her expectations, 3rd month in, we found, and we were already building like resistance as well. She was a client that after every meeting, cool, let's jump to recommendations. And we haven't even gotten all the financial data. And then we found out we had an honest conversation with the client. And this is also perhaps what you realize you can do with like your existing clients that you don't get on well, or you feel like there's some resentment or friction that you have with them, is they are still human at the end of the day. So have that meeting. I would say have that meeting first before you fire them, and just honestly say, look, I have this kind of like, I feel there's this tension in how we work and engage. And I just want to know, what are your expectations? Because I feel there's a mismatch here, instead of just trying to guess and then you just self-torturing yourself. So going back to this client, we actually had a meeting in the 3rd month and we actually parted ways civilly because we found out, we're not a good fit. And there were expectations that she didn't mention in the first meeting that were also triggering points for her. So then coming back to Carlos, just to answer your question, have an onboarding process and coaching process in the start. Usually try and do it in that first meeting. Have a list of certain questions you want to ask that client, ask what the expectations are, explain your advice process, and also be transparent on how you charge. That's also one. But it gives you an idea of like, okay, is this client going to be a paying client long term? Because if you don't bring up how you charge in that first session, then it comes down later that they have an issue. Not only have you spent, and I've done it with myself, I've made that mistake. You've spent hours, you spent 6 meetings with this client, 1 to 2 hour sessions, and you haven't been paid. And then they have an issue with your fees at end. Then you build even further more resentment. So it's all about doing all the process of groundwork in that first meeting or earlier on to save you time. So that would be my advice on that.
Yeah, solid, man. Appreciate it, Russ. Thank you.
Thanks, Russell. Shannon?
Yeah, Carlos, what I found over time, first of all, if a client doesn't fit in with your process, they must be failed straight away as far as I'm concerned. When I have that initial coffee chat with the client, I turn around to them, I say to them, the reason for the chat is for you to assess whether you can work with me and for me to assess whether I can work with you. And one thing I've certainly found over time is the clients where there has been this literal personality mismatch, where we just don't gel from a personality perspective. Even though I took them on as clients, over time, they've ended up leaving me and to me, it's about this personality mismatch. And I think that's one thing you need to realize over time is not everybody's going to be your client. They might tick all the boxes as to what the ideal client is, but if that personality mismatch is there, and sometimes I believe failure is fast, move on. And yeah, it's a risk. So I do think it's a big thing. And what Russell says here is sit down and maybe take it to a head with the client, and that sometimes can alleviate the situation. Right in the early days, when I started in the industry and we still had business cards, one thing I was taught, and this is cutting my teeth from a life insurer, if the client didn't fit into your process or wasn't kind of going the route that you were taking them, I would turn around to them and say, please give me back my business card, because I don't want my name being associated with your outcomes. And in that instance, and I did it twice back in the old days, and it actually woke up the client and thought, hang on a second, this is really something important, that's that important to you that you prepared to fail me as a client. And so just something else.
Oh, thanks so much.
It's really hard to do when we start, and this whole session started off with what's his name, saying they were learning stuff. Sorry, I've got a blank. Anyway, happens at my age. But you never do stop learning. So Cindy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I'm just myself in front of clients. I refuse to have to not be my usual bubbly, cheeky self. And I say to them, when I get out of my bed in the morning and I'm excited to come to work. I want to work with someone that I really want to work with. And I say to them, I want you, likewise, after this coffee meeting, to go home and think about if I'm someone you want to work with. And I find that goes down really well because there's just such openness and bluntness that you find your tribe, you know. Life's too short to work with the wrong client. And I know that it's a luxury to say, I don't worry so much about the money side because I just have this deep trust that the right clients will come and I will be able to continue with this business and I will be able to, you know, continue with the future plans that I've got. So I don't see a client and go, oh, they've got 10 million rand, I need to take them on. If they're not right, they're not right. And yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I obviously did take all of those clients, but no longer.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. And what you said in the end there is exactly right. I mean, I've got two instances, two extremes at the moment. I've got a client that was introduced to us at the beginning of the year. I've had a look now. And it's complicated because she lives here, works offshore for a business in the UK. So there's a few complications, but we've sorted it all out now. But we've had 12 meetings this year. She's a single mom, so what's happened is she kind of leans on us, and I say us, the team, for stuff, and we are only implementing a product now. So we've given lots of advice. We're helping get things sorted and everything. And down the line, yes, also economically, she will be a profitable client for the business. But we focus very much on the person. I put something on LinkedIn a week or two back saying the story before the money, and yeah, confuses people. But I honestly believe this. I learn this time and time again. In our process, we only look at the money after the second meeting. So clients say, what can I bring? We say, bring nothing. So we don't know whether they got 100 Rand or 100 million Rand. Okay. Obviously, you can kind of like fathom, you know, especially as you get more experience, you kind of, or they've been referred, you know, a little bit about them. But very often what people think people have got and what they've got are two very, very different things. Okay. But I still, for me, and this is for me, but for me, I mean, I don't change if I see the number, but it really, really helps if I'm just focusing on that person for those first two meetings and I'm getting to understand him. And Carlos, with what you were saying, you know, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes a client is like, it's a bit tricky, you know, because people can change. They're testing us as well. Sometimes they'll come into a meeting and they'll be full of shit and you think, oh, this person's a real dickhead. But then as you get to know them, the relationship changes. They learn to trust you because they've been burnt before as well, maybe. So we always ask our clients, what has the experience been with previous planners? And then what would they expect from us? We say, if 3 to 5 years down the line, you look back and say, this was great, what would we have done for you? Okay. Because it kind of helps. I mean, yesterday we had a client and he said, my money must grow after costs. So I said to him, shit, you're setting the bar really, really low. Is that all you want me to do? And, you know, so, but you got to ask those questions. So when you get difficult clients, Carlos, go deeper, faster. I promise you. You're either going to blow them out the water and you're going to save yourself a whole lot of money or time, okay, and money, because time is money, or you're going to actually connect with them on a different level, I think. So you've got to be quite brave to do that. But after it, when someone I had a guy came in here, he said, I'm a bean counter and I just want once of advice. And I said to him, yeah, you must be so uncomfortable sitting here. And I just smiled at him. And he you know, I could see, look, he never came back. But that was what I wanted because he wanted once of advice. And I don't work like that. So I've got a client, known since January, 12 meetings. Not only are we implementing some income protection, but there will be stuff down the line because we have the plan, we built the trust. I've got another client who we've been looking after, I looked this morning, for 6 years, who was referred by his business partner at the time, a weirdo, okay, like really eccentric, wears a funny cap, and he's just in every way, but that's cool. People are different, so I've got no issue with that. And that business went and he started another business, then he worked with someone else, now he's got another. And we've just ridden this with him. And economically, not a profitable relationship, but we've spent all the time building that relationship. In my view, we help them, we're always available. And it's, you know, those clients where I've got to meet now. And then, okay, like I've got this money, we need to invest, what can we do? And what about this? And you got all this stuff and you do prepare these things. And then nothing happens. And then a few months down the line, reset, same thing, nothing happens. So yesterday I get notification from BrightRock that another advisor's looked at some of his risk. So I emailed him straight. I said, I got notification on your risk. He says, yes, and expect another one from this person at Sanlam and that. So I said back, like, okay, does this mean we're not working together anymore? And he emails back, no, of course we are, last night. So I sent a kind email this morning saying, actually, we don't work. That's like asking for a hall pass. We don't work like that. So we have to have a conversation. And this is a client which, Carlos, I kind of knew in the beginning, the whole team knew was always going to be a challenge because they're either loving us or the world is falling apart and everyone has to jump. And then you start thinking, well, it actually doesn't matter on the economic side because as Russell was saying, it starts creeping into the whole team and it's just negative vibes and everything. So yeah, I think, but it's easy for me to say I'm 35 years in, I have an existing business, I can be more picky. Okay, for the people starting off, I'm saying just protect yourself, but at the same time, give it a go. You know, you're only going to learn. If you go into it knowing this is probably going to blow up down the line, but let me just see what I can do. There's nothing wrong with that. That is how we learn. So, yeah, that's my view. Dom?
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, I think on my side, just listening to what everyone has to say, I resonate with a lot of it. You know, I came into a business that was established, but the financial planning side wasn't established at all. And you kind of take what you can at that point in time. Any client comes along, and I've since joining this group, I've spent a lot of time absorbing a lot of the information that everyone says and shares. And quite often I find myself not really speaking out in the sessions. But I've learned a lot from it, and I think it's reflecting back on the business now and trying to take those steps to make those improvements and learn more about myself and who I want to become and what I offer to clients. It's quite a challenging journey. You know, I'm just me. I've got one administrator, and I've learned, unfortunately, the hard way that I can't do everything all the time for everyone. I'm only one human. So yeah, Cindy, what you said, I look up to you and where you come, you know, where you've got to, because I feel like it's something that I want to strive towards. I also want to wake up in the mornings and only deal with people that want to deal with you, and that are invested in the process. So yeah, it's an interesting journey. So thank you for everyone for sharing as well. I know it can be difficult to open up a little bit, but yeah.
Thanks, Dom. I know that's not easy for you, but really we appreciate it. It's actually quite interesting. I was just thinking about it. And this is nothing to people who aren't here today, but it's one of the first times we haven't had a subject that would maybe pull people into a session, and people are here because they want to be here, which is really cool. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I had other things written down, and we've touched on it. So emphasis on spending time on the onboarding, which again, I've just learned there are no shortcuts. It's the biggest investment that you can make. And we're talking, Mel, you joined a bit late, but we're talking specifically around your lifestyle financial planning relationships. And I'm saying that because I know some businesses kind of have both, okay? Or you have both types of clients. And then, yeah, another challenge sometimes which we faced in the past, and which I think is really important, is when you're dealing with couples, is getting both parts of that couple in. You know, very often we will find that it's very often the man, but very often one of the couple will kind of assume the financial side. And it's very, very difficult, because if we're doing a lifestyle planning approach, it's completely different to what almost everyone would expect, or everything they've experienced. So for them to go home and explain that to their partner, where they're expecting to hear about returns and funds and the outcomes, to say, well, actually, like they asked me about how we met and, you know, how many kids we have and what school I went to and how I feel about money. And, you know, it's like they get a chance. You sat with a weirdo today, you know. So again, the emphasis on getting couples in together is really, really so important, because again, if we're going to do our job properly, you know, there are always two parts to a couple. Opposites attract, and that's just a fact. So, you know, I think that is really important. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that.
I do.
Mel, how's it, Mel?
Sorry, I've sort of picked up the conversation. Morning, everybody. Sorry, I was a little bit late. So I just was thinking, when you're talking about couples, how I get around that, because I know it's always hard to collate information, especially with the lifestyle financial planning. And what I have done to work around that is we will always send, I mean, obviously, you know, they're going to approach you for whatever planning they're needing. Is we send them a proposal and, you know, quote them for whatever services they are requiring. And it does help when a client comes to you because they've been referred to you by somebody else, because they've sort of got an idea already of what you do. And I just find using our onboarding, and I find that once we request a 50% deposit for the planning elements, and I just find that once they've paid that, they tend to get the information to us very quickly. Obviously, because they feel that they've now paid an amount of money to us, and we make it very clear to them that we will not commence work unless every single document that we've requested has been sent to us. So, I mean, look, I'm not saying it takes a week. I mean, we're working with a couple now where it's probably taken about 3 months, because they travel and they're all over the place. But I mean, we finally received all the documentation this week, but they've already paid their deposit, like probably a month ago. But what's actually surprising for me with this particular couple is it was the wife that started talking to me, and I thought she was the jacked up one. And the next minute, when all the information was coming through, the husband was sending everything. So I even initially, I was like quite taken aback, because I was almost biased by, you know, most of the time the woman sends everything. It's all in my experience. It's always the wife that gets all the information, or the accountant or whatever. But I was very surprised with this. It was a complete switch with this couple. And we've got our first IWP meeting with them next week, actually. And yeah, so I just find that we work differently, as you know, where they've got to pay us a deposit first, and then we won't commence until we've got all the information. But I just find once they've paid that deposit, they send us the information very, very quickly, because obviously they've invested in the process, vested in the process. So just my take. But Cindy, I was hearing you as well. I'm very much like you. I want to work with people who are vested in their financial and take their finances seriously. And I also want to work with couples only who have got unity in their finances. They might disagree, but I won't see a husband on his own without his wife. And that's just a rule that I've made in my business.
Thanks, Mel.
Just mine.
No. The beauty of this group is everyone works differently, and that is all acceptable, because there's not one way to skin a cat, although we're not skinning cats. I mean, we've got a client at the moment. So I was introduced, she popped in about 2 years ago, and then a few weeks ago she was referred again, came in. who realized she'd met with me before. Her husband works offshore on the oil wells, earns huge money. Anyway, she's now doing this stuff herself. Okay, so she's got the wells thought she's doing this, she's doing that, and anyway, I just said, look, we can offer. This is what we can offer, but you got to go through the process. Anyway, so she came, we went through the first meeting, and she engaged really well. Really interesting setup. Now we're needing information. Okay. Husband suddenly doesn't want to get bank accounts. Okay, we don't need bank accounts, just we need kind of the balances and then there's no, but we just give the amounts. I said, you know, and I'm saying to the team, guys, if they're not going to give us what we need, if you go to a doctor and you say, I've gone for blood tests, but I'm not going to give you the results, but I want you to diagnose me, the doctor, you know, he's going to look, well, depends on who the doctor is. But in our case, I'm saying that this is an indication. Number one, the reason you want people to give you information is you want to show, like in Mel's case, where they pay up front, that they engage. If they're not getting info back to you, they're not engaged. That's a huge red flag. Okay. And now this girl is super keen to see the modeling, if they're on track or not, you know, because they're kind of like, what do they call them? Doomsday preppers. You know, they've got like 2 million rand in gold bars somewhere. You know, they've got diamonds. And then they've got like cash. So I know straight away, like my experience tells me that this is not a good situation, although they think, you know, because like, you know, who's going to swap a bar of gold for a loaf of bread anyway? I don't think anyone thinks about these things practically. Or if your gold's locked up in a safe in Joburg and you're living in St. Francis Bay, how are you going to get to it anyway? But a red flag here is, and the guy's saying, okay, but we can work. I'm saying, no, we can't. Like, we need the detail, the investments with Investec. Okay, we need to know how is it invested. We need to know what the fees are. We need that detail. If we don't do that, I'm like, because then what I'm doing is I'm letting her take control. She's deciding what she gives us. And now she's going to hold us to whatever advice we give. And it's quite simple. Until we get that information, there's no go. And in fact, otherwise we'll terminate that relationship before we even started, because it's simply not worth it. Zizwe, you got your hand up.
Morning, everyone. Just listening to everyone's points, it's very challenging, especially when you're still building the business. But on my side, when I talk to somebody who's married, obviously, depending on the personality and the type of segment of clients that you're dealing with, I find it that there's a lot of education that I still need to do, especially when people are married, just explaining about their regime and the financial impact of whatever marriage regime they're actually in. Before then, they can get to a point of being onboarded. They need to understand that, because sometimes the person will come in and say, no, I'm just interested in doing planning myself, but I'm in trying to do the financial planning in a lifestyle planning format. It requires them to look at their lifestyle as a married couple, which sometimes is very challenging, because some couples don't want to share everything which they're supposed to be sharing. But then I insist on getting them to understand the financial impacts of that marital regime that they are in, which sometimes can be very emotionally taxing, because you're dealing with their emotional fears, and there are a lot of things that they may not sometimes be communicating to each other as a couple. Yeah, that's what I've experienced.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, yeah, and if they're not sitting there together, then you're never going to find those things out. So yeah. Yeah, so other things I'd written down was just was kind of the scripts. In other words, what you know, how you and that's all part of your onboarding process. And again, just really emphasize what happens to us. We sometimes go easy on it, and you always end up paying for it later. We in those first 2-3 meetings when we're onboarding, that's when people are listening to us the most. So, you've got to dig a little bit deep. If you're doing lifestyle financial planning, you do have to dig a little bit deeper. There have to be a few moments where the clients sit for 30 seconds and think before they answer a question. Because when you get them thinking that way, it just kind of sets you up for the rest of the relationship. And then what's really important is that when you're doing your reviews, you go back there all the time. You go back, you just remind them of what's important, how you have the discussions. And it just makes the life a whole lot easier, because if you're using cash flow planning, which you have to, then the plan will show you're on track, you're not on track, and then the rest of the discussion ends up really being more about them personally and any changes in their lifestyle goals or in their personal situation around their family, their kids, their business, or whatever. Okay, and then one thing which is probably the hardest for all of us, especially if we are not fronting as asset managers, investment specialists, wealth managers, is proving our value. Okay. So we'll all have different strengths. Ferdy, you're an accountant. I'm not sure who else. I'm sure there's a lawyer in the room somewhere. But, we all have, everyone comes in and there's something normally a little bit special about you and your background that makes you different in your own view. But it always is a challenge, is how do we express our value? And like this client I explained who now is got other people looking these risk stuff. I think there, and I'm saying to my wife, what the fuck is going on here? Like, we've done everything for this person. We've always been available. He knows he's a pain in the ass. He's one of those guys. But yet it still happens. And, the one part of you says, just leave it and see what happens. And then the other part of me says, no, bugger this. Like, you asked for a hall pass. I don't operate that way. You're out. And in fact, the fact that you even asked for it means you're probably 60% out the door in any case. Which is hard, because firing clients is not easy. Again, because you've spent time doing that. But then I come down to, like, how does this guy not understand all the value that we've added? Like, we've added so much personal energy, so much professional expertise into making sure he's in the right risk product, in when he changed jobs, making sure it was changed properly, that it fitted his new circumstance. I mean, it takes an effort to do that. You can either leave it or you do it properly, and we do it properly. And you think, how does this guy not see the value that we've added? So, I don't know. Has anyone got any answers for me? Go for it now.
Yeah, I'm smiling because I was actually typing in the chat box. There's always that one client. So I think a lot of us that have been around for a long time start realizing that a lot of our clients, especially these high net worth clients, are ADHD and attention span of about 5 seconds. And I mean, I recently had an issue with a client where he made a comment at his offices, and he was like, he wants to know how much fees he pays, because it's just smoke and mirrors in our industry. He runs a huge short-term brokerage and takes 12.5% off commission. Yeah. I mean, he's just got an account this month where they're earning R1 million commission a month. And I was so irritated with him. And I actually confronted him and I said, please don't say that in front of all your staff, because I look after your entire family. I look after everything. I'm here when you want to phone me at 7 o'clock at night. For issues that are not even related to, your business or investment planning, or, like staff issues and that. But anyway, the bottom line was he eventually apologized to me. And I said to him, it's fine. I said, I know you like ADHD and you say things on impulse and that, because sometimes our personalities are different. And he came to see me in Durban and he apologized to me. And it really boiled down to like what Cesare was actually saying earlier. He had been with friends, of course, who are billionaires and who are moaning about and saying that brokers basically steal from their clients because they just take all these fees and that. And I said to him, I actually put my screen on and I said, I want to show you your statements you get every single month. And on your statements, you can see the exact fee that you've signed for, that you've agreed, that's blah, blah, blah. And I said, so we've always been transparent with you. And the bottom line is it came down to education. And the funny thing is his accountants actually phoned me and said to me that he'd taken my spreadsheet because something else I realized in our industry, we don't have one software system that can collate if a client has got an Allen Gray, a 91, a wealth, offshore, put it all into one spreadsheet, give you the day that they did their dollar, whatever exchange rate, at what rate they converted, what the total return. There is nothing in our industry that can do that. So we've created a spreadsheet that the clients can see from day one it's actually quite a nightmare to try and source that information and put it all together. And his accountants actually phoned me and said, oh, he's sharing my spreadsheet. She heard him talking to somebody on the phone about my fees and that. And the guy actually turned around and on the phone the person was saying to him that he should be lucky that he gets charged those fees because that's not even like a lot. Anyway, but the bottom line was this was really an education thing, for me to sit down and say to him, like, what are you not understanding, and I mean, I was so pissed off with him. I actually said to him, just, just take your business, just take everything, because I honestly don't say, because that comment really irritated me, and sometimes it gets us because they don't always know all the work that we do for them. They forget. So I think it's also about like education and giving them what they wanted. All he wanted was one spreadsheet that showed him everything and not statement by statement, or, when we do work with them, we send them a quote, they sign for the fees. All he wanted was one statement showing everything, which unfortunately we cannot get in this industry, any provider. So it really was just an education thing. And now he's as sweet as pie. He's just like so nice to me. But sometimes we need to have those confronting conversations and not be scared, if our clients are like that with us, and stand up to them.
Yeah, I'm going to say until next time. Yeah, Mel, I think I'm really glad you brought that up, and also because everyone knows that your business runs a bit differently, where the fees and everything is up front, so that's how you choose to work. What I'm talking of, and it's so great that you brought that up, because there is a contrast, because like that's like saying, it's kind of like, what does my accountant charge me and my lawyer, like you pay an auditing fee or whatever. There's like that's kind of what audit costs, and mine's a little bit more or less depending on complexity or whatever, or that kind of thing. The real difficulty with lifestyle financial planning is a lot of what we do is not tangible. So a lot of it cannot be put into a spreadsheet. So being able to put into a spreadsheet is fantastic. And you're right, the reporting is, and my view of that, just my personal view, and it's not a critique, my personal view is, for me in my world, if I'm having to put together a spreadsheet to show my value, I've lost the battle. Then I've not done how I want to run my business. Okay, so we all run it differently. That's perfect. So for me, the challenge is, as a lifestyle financial planner, like with this guy, where we've helped him through everything, and we've been there, and I can send him all the minutes of the meetings and the recordings, because we do that with everyone. It's like, and then I realized it comes down to, initially we knew this guy was not in a perfect fit. And not everyone has to be a perfect fit, but it was straddling the line, and now down the line, it shows that actually maybe, you know, it's maybe not a good fit for us anymore. And so that I have to make the decision, what do we do moving forward? And what are the rugby I'm going to be wrong? If we fire the client, oh, we're going to lose some income. If I keep him, I risk this happening again. And what I need to weigh up is how much potential damage that can they do to the team. So I'm probably going to have a conversation with him, be very, very direct with him, and say, look, this is how we work. If you're not prepared to work on this basis, I'll greet you when I see you, but we're not going to work together. It's just that simple. But I think that there is a real challenge when we're doing lifestyle planning. And again, this comes down to me, especially the onboarding. If we're not going to connect with our clients when we start, and we say we're doing lifestyle planning, but we're not connecting, we're not actually doing it, down the line, it does become very difficult for them to see value in what we do, okay? So we need to get them to think about things, and we need to get them to take action as well. This person we've seen over 12 meetings in 6 months, if we don't get them to start actually taking action, and funny enough, with the first, we're putting some risk cover in place. She is questioning because of the cost, but then you look at the budget where money is being spent elsewhere, and I've got to go back and say, remember, you're a single mom. No one's, if you lose your ability to earn an income, and because you're earning pounds, you're earning a lot, you're dead in the water. You've got a 6-month-old son, no father. Like, you know, I've got to commutize that amount that would pay out if something happened to you now, and what that actually means in your life. Again, commuting is probably not the right thing. I'd probably say, well, you're going to lose your house, your car, this, because that is the simple reality. But I think the only way one of the ways that we can carry on showing how we add value is to keep on reminding our clients of where we are. And because we use a cash flow planning model, and what we do is whenever we do a review, we create a new scenario. So we kind of reset it. And we've got clients retiring recently, and we go back to when we started working with them 10 years ago. And you say, look, that's where you were. Flip, if you got to 15, 16 million, you would have signed up right there and then. We've now got you to 40, 50 million. It's like a whole nother world because you've been focused on your plan. Things have gone really well. But when people see that difference, you know, and sometimes we've got to show them some numbers, because people remember the soft stuff until there's something wrong, and then it's natural. People don't see the good, they only see the problem in front of them, you know. But I think there's a challenge for us that we've got to keep on trying to find ways of how we have added value, and maybe keep that snapshot of when you start working with a client of where they are, and then show them later on, okay, this is where you are now. And yes, you've done it, but remember, we partnered with you. We've helped you get there. So yeah. Shannon.
Yeah, Dirk, I share your sentiments, and my struggles are with my long-standing clients. I actually, as I said earlier on, I kind of feel a little bit guilty in that, in relation to what I'm earning, I'm maybe not doing enough for them. But the thing is, everything's worked to this point, and we went through a lot of hard yards to get to this point, and we 20 years down the line, and people forget what we've been through, and it is a struggle. And sometimes I feel I've got to go and look for stuff purely to illustrate the value that I'm adding, and it's a big weakness for me. I think I shared with some of the guys will probably remember a while back, one of my oldest clients in terms of tenure. They were one of the clients that I brought on board right in early days. We were always planning for them to get to retirement at age 55. He got to retirement at age 52. We way overshot the number. And out of the blue, one day he just sent me an email to say, I'm turning off all fees because we've done so well. I don't see any more need for your service. And that was something that really knocked the wind out of my sails, because it was a great relationship. Everything was just going so well. So I said to myself, well, how could I have done better in illustrating the value that I've added to this guy?
Yeah, Shannon, it's a challenge. And you know what? The reality is those things are going to happen. They are going to happen. But I think as long as for the majority of our clients, we're able to maintain those relationships. And you're right, we get clients I've worked with for many years, and they're now finding solace in the fact as they're getting older, where we say, no, we don't change anything. Because they will come to you, they're suddenly making more money, and they say, so like, but those funds are a bit boring. Isn't there something like a bit more sexy? Or my mate's got this, or he's gone for a hedge fund, or he's done this. And I'm not knocking anything. I'm just saying we keep things really, really simple. Like the trap backs say, just go with what's always worked. It's always worked. Fads are going to come and go. Wherever there's a big marketing budget, things are going to look fantastic. But at the end of the day, and I always go back, it's like a personal relationship that you would have with your spouse or, a good friend. Like nothing changes. I was with a mate the other day. We've been mates since I was 14, so that's 54 years. No, sorry, 44 years. And nothing's changed. Those friendships, when you get together and the wives go, oh my God, here we go again. But it's wonderful, and that is what the relationship's built on. Yeah, everything's changed. We've both been divorced. We've been through different experiences, good and bad times. But when I look at a personal relationship, even with my wife, it's if we keep the real thing all the time, we don't have to do massive changes, because that's what kind of attracted you in the first place to that relationship, and it keeps it strong. So I think if you keep those basics right, and I also think you put yourself at risk if you one day wake up and start saying, actually, we're now looking at a completely different investment strategy. Okay. Which I battle with at the moment, because especially when it comes to offshore, I'm saying, well, Vanguard at 0.1%, beating 95% of active fund managers, that kind of does it for me. I haven't been in the top 5% in anything in my life. So for me, that's pretty good, and it's an easy story to sell. You're buying the whole market versus Jupiter or whoever, UBS or some other fancy fund manager, So I'm not saying you mustn't change tech, but I just think, remember, you've got to keep that relationship real. And what made it work in the beginning, you've got to kind of keep bringing that out, because that's what's going to work into the future. Ferdy.
Yeah, so something I thought about with the showing my value to clients and the conversation that you guys have is, bad things will happen, clients will leave, and you will have that difficult conversations around the fees and what value you bring to the table. But I have to sleep at night. So my own peace of mind is where I try to go. So if I do explain everything to the client about where I added value and explain it again because they forget, and explain it again, then I have peace of mind, whatever their decision is, like if they want to leave me or anything, it goes directly into these investment decisions that they have. So everybody knows not timing the market type of scenario, but if a client wants to withdraw their money when the market's fallen, if I can prove that I've explained everything as well as I can about how not to do it or why not to do it, and they still decide I want to do it type of scenario, it's my peace of mind. I've educated them as far as I can. So now it's up to them making this decision. So showing the value that I can add to a client and keeping them and not keeping them and those things, it's like my own peace of mind, where I go home and I've explained it to them 4 or 5 times over and over. This is what I've done. This is how you've grown. This is everything. This is the spreadsheet. This is the soft stuff. Then I'm perfectly fine about them making the decision they want to. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Ferdy. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
You can't be in any relationship where you give of yourself personally, which we do, if you're a lifestyle planner, And then when that relationship terminates, not on your terms, that it doesn't hurt. That would simply not be natural. So I think again there, we need to kind of, and the best thing then is when that happens is just to go and find some of your lacquer clients and have a nice chat and just help them remind you of how much value you do add them and how much they actually appreciate you, you know. But yeah, that's the swings and the roundabouts. It can't only be good times. Yeah. Well, you go, Jana.
So I was just thinking, like Shannon, what you were saying. So we, especially with the Section 14 renewal, fee renewals and that, we actually say to a client, we haven't ever had anybody want to take the fee off, but we have terminated a few clients where we've wanted to take our fee off the investment and broker note them or remove us as the broker on record. And I'm just thinking, Shannon, a way for you to help this client is we just say to the client that, we can't give them advice anymore. The investment companies will not take that client back. The investment companies want a letter signed that the client understands that they are not going to be getting advice anymore and they're on their own. So, if that client wants to take his fee off, I would just say to the client, we can't actually look after you anymore. Because, what about like our onboarding, our FICA, our sanctions, I'm not saying beeswax. Just the cost. We've worked out the cost of just having a client on our books.
Sorry, Mel, maybe you misunderstood me, but when the client turns his fee off, that's not negotiable. They are no longer a client of mine.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, that client's gone. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just saying, like, clients don't understand, like, we even charge our clients for onboarding.
So Mel,
Like, if our
you could, Mel, because I
proposals-
know you've done it. So what have you worked out is your fee to onboard a client with all the FICA process, the beeswax, all of that?
So it's about 3,750 rand.
Well, then I think that's for nothing. I think that's
Exactly.
then you're not charging for your time because
No, that's just to onboard a client. That's just to keep
when I
our
did
clients.
when I did the exercise about 4 years ago, where I looked at the staff, what the staff did in that whole process, it was 16,000 rand. So apart from the kind of the beeswax stuff, I'm talking about time spent sending out emails, taking them through the process, collecting information, analyzing the data, and then presenting a plan for the situation.
So sorry, that's just keeping my clients on. I'm not talking about reviews. I'm not talking about.
Oh, that's just to keep them.
That's just to keep them there. That's not even with having a conversation with them, or that's keeping them on my books, my compliance, my reporting, they don't understand the cost to keep a client on our books. You can have a client that doesn't have a freaking ID copy that is whatever year old and be fined 600,000 rand tomorrow. So you're going to lose a client who you're earning 50 rand a month off. Anyway, I don't want to go down that road.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mel. Shannon?
Just again to share I had quite an interesting conversation with a client last week where we were sitting with a review, and she's got a son who's an asset manager and they run a property portfolio. And we were talking about returns, and according to her, the son on the property portfolio, they're getting a yield of 22%. I'm not even going to go into the detail of how they make up that 22%. And she's saying, but why aren't we doing better on our portfolio? And I turned around to her and I said to her, we had a mandate where we're looking to get inflation +4 over time after fees. And she says, yes, correct. And I said, right, let's go back and have a look at it. And we've got inflation +6 over time after fees. So we've done certainly better than what we were mandated to achieve. And she says, okay, you're right. And I said, you just got to understand, there's smoother ride, there's concentration risk, there's diversification and all of that. And I said to her right from the get-go, I'm dull and boring. And that's how I sell it to clients. My company logo is the tortoise and the hare. That's how I work with clients. Slow but steady. That's how it runs. And when I go back and remind them, and all of a sudden, that's why I do what I do. And if that doesn't gel with them, if they want something else, if they want the spicy, exciting stuff, well, I'm not the man for that. And then you've got to go to somebody else. So it's just about also going back and just reminding them who I am and what I'm here to do.
Yeah, and I agree, Shannon. And that's why, outlining what you're going to do initially and then revisiting that and almost looking at the progress is really important. I mean, the minute you start talking about returns, unless they're absolutely dismal, then I think you've kind of lost the game.
So
Guys,
just
you
something
gotta-
else to
yeah.
add. Sorry, Dirk. Something that just somehow never comes up in conversation with me and my clients is we never ever talk about fees. And that's what I struggle with, this whole fee argument. And to me, it's something that I think the profession is using to drum up business. Because at the end of the day, what we're interested in is, are they meeting their objectives? And if they're meeting the objectives, it doesn't matter what they're paying for it. They're meeting their objectives. We're getting them on the journey. And any returns that we always talk are always netter fees. And so it's something that never, ever comes up in conversation.
Yeah, look, that's a whole nother discussion, and we don't want to touch on that now. But I agree with you. I think all that's the important thing about fees is complete transparency, and that's it. I'm going to pay a doctor in Cape Town a lot more than I'm going to pay him in PE. It's not better, could be worse. That's just how it works. Okay, guys, thanks so much for sharing. It's been a really great session. I'll put the recording on the group, and yeah, we'll have our next session next month in September. And if there's anything specific that anyone thinks we should discuss, please let me know. But yeah, thanks for being here today.
Thank
Yes,
you, everybody.
guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for
Bye.
sharing.
Thank you.
Yes, bye.
Bye.